Each candidate will be offered to have 2 minutes for an introduction, and then we will take some questions from the League of Women Voters, and then we'll have any questions from the in-person audience and Zoom questions from the chat section. For our in-person audience, again, I remind you, use those index cards on your chairs and you'll catch the attention of a League of Women Voter member, and they will bring the question up to us here at the front. After questions and answers, each candidate will have an additional minute for any closing statement that they would like to make. We have a warning sign up here at the front and a timer who's going to enforce the time limits. Candidates will give their opening statement in the ballot order and reverse ballot order for the closing statement. So we appreciate these candidates being here. Bill Ellis, you were first on the ballot, so you've got your 2 minutes for your opening comment.
First, I want to thank the League of Women Voters for putting this event on, and I want to thank all of the guests who've come to attend to hear what the candidates have to say. My name is Bill Ellis, and I have a really deep commitment and strong feelings about Boone County, and that's because I was born and raised here. It's where I've lived my whole life, where I went to college and law school, and where I've remained since law school. I graduated law school in 2001. And since that time, I've been practicing. In the 25 years I've been out of law school, I've handled a wide variety of practice areas. I've handled cases in every area that can come in front of Associate Circuit Court: civil, criminal, family, traffic, probate, and juvenile. I don't mean that I've dabbled in each of those. I mean that at various times during my career, each of those has been a very important, integral part of my law practice. But I want to tell you why I've decided that now is the time for me to run, and why I'm running for Division 9 and not the Division 11 seat that's also on the ballot. And the answer to both questions is the same. It's that Boone County is losing its juvenile court expert. Judge Tracy Gonzalez is our current Division 9 judge, and she's retiring. For as long as she's been the Division 9 judge, Division 9 has been our juvenile court division. And her departure leaves a big need for someone who can step in and fill those shoes and handle those cases with the care that they deserve. I've been practicing, as I said, for 25 years, but for the last 15, I've been handling juvenile cases, and those are my passion. I was a deputy juvenile officer before I went to law school. I was appointed to the Missouri Juvenile Justice Advisory Board in 2016. It was created after Michael Brown was murdered in Ferguson. I'm in juvenile court nearly every docket, working with kids and families facing abuse and neglect, kids who've been charged with crimes, families wishing to adopt. I think it's really important for our court to have someone that knows juvenile law, and I think it's even more important for the kids and families in juvenile court to have a judge that knows the law and wants to be there. And so I would humbly ask for your vote, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Bill Ellis, thank you. Spencer Smith, we welcome you, and we'd like to hear your opening 2-minute remarks.
Hey, good evening. Can everyone hear me okay? All right. Thank you for having me. My name's Spencer Smith. I'm running for Associate Judge, Division 9. I currently work as a public defender here in Columbia, and I'm a former Boone County prosecutor. And so that's given me the unique perspective of being on both sides of the aisle. I have 16 jury trials under my belt as lead counsel. And those are in cases ranging from DWIs to serious felonies. And, prior to going to law school, I was an enlisted man in the U.S. Navy, where I became a qualified submariner. And so I spent most of my career in public service, and I have a passion for public service, and that's one of the primary reasons that drives me to run for associate judge. And we don't know if Division 9 or Division 11 is going to handle juvenile cases or not. The presiding judge is the one that decides what types of cases the newly elected judge will handle. And for example, when Tracy Gonzalez was elected, she didn't start doing juvenile right away. Judge Schneider was doing juvenile at that time. And so whoever gets elected, they need to be able to handle whatever the presiding judge assigns them. And as somebody that's worked on both sides of the aisle and who's fought for victims' rights as well as the rights of the accused, I respectfully ask for your vote. Thank you.
We'll go to questions now, and these questions have been provided, the first couple of questions by the League of Women Voters, and Bill Ellis, you'll be first to answer this. You both have expressed already an answer to some of this question, talking about the breadth and depth of your courtroom and trial experience and the type of cases that you both have handled. My question then will be, so how does this experience translate into being a judge?
I think that the important thing to understand about this is that there's no substitute for courtroom experience. And I've been in the courtroom every day for 25 years in a wide variety of cases. I've handled criminal cases, civil, almost exclusively civil for about 6 or 7 years toward the beginning of my career. I think that handling a wide variety of cases, broadening the breadth of cases that you are familiar with teaches you how to listen better. I think it teaches you how to apply law from other areas that may not be as familiar. I think that these areas do touch upon each other a lot, and I think that having a wide range of experience is actually a big strength and something that can really pay big dividends for a judge who is familiar with a lot of different practice areas and is able to help a lot of different kids and a lot of different families and a lot of different litigants in a lot of different ways.
Thank you. Spencer Smith, the same question to you. The experiences that you kind of outlined in your opening statement, how do those translate into being a good judge?
Yes, thank you. And I agree with Mr. Ellis that there really is no substitute for courtroom experience. And like I shared, I have 16 jury trials under my belt. Just a couple weeks ago, I had a jury trial in front of Judge Shaw. I've tried several very serious felonies where my client was facing life in prison. I've also been on the other side where I've prosecuted cases and tried cases as a Boone County prosecutor where someone was facing decades in prison. And so that courtroom experience is extremely important, because one of the most important thing a judge does is preside over trials and decides what types of evidence can come in. And there's really no substitution for jury trial experience.
We'll start with Spencer Smith answering this question from the league. What has been the most challenging legal case that you've worked on?
There was a case I worked on where I was defending a gentleman that was facing over 100 years in prison for crimes he committed between the ages of 13 and 17. And that was a very challenging case for a lot of different reasons. I think the main thing is just talking and meeting with the client that young, and someone being on trial for things that they did when they were a teenager that they were being tried for years later. It was challenging, but I took the case on, and we had a jury trial down in Phelps County, and that sticks out as one of the more challenging cases I've handled.
Thank you. Bill Ellis, the same question for you. What has been the most challenging legal case that you've worked on?
I think cases can all be challenging in their own unique ways. Some are challenging because there are difficult people involved. Some can be challenging because the facts or the law is difficult to decipher, or perhaps the law can have unintended consequences. Others can be emotionally challenging. And one case that has really stuck with me throughout my career is when I represented a 15-year-old girl who was in foster care. And while in foster care, she was seriously injured in a very serious car accident and was brain dead. And we had to have a hearing about whether or not she would continue to be kept alive using artificial measures to help her breathe and keep her heart beating. And I had to make a recommendation to the judge. But ultimately, it was the judge who had to make that decision about whether or not she should be able to, or she should be allowed to die peacefully, or whether she should be kept alive. And I think that speaks a lot about the kinds of decisions that judges can make and why it's important that we have judges that we trust to make those decisions.
We are going to be quickly out of time for this segment, and I know that our guests are going to think that it has gone way too fast and they'd love to spend another hour answering questions, but I don't have that luxury. So I need to ask you this, and Bill Ellis, you're first on this. Recent stories that have run in the community talk about how much crime is being committed by juveniles. How can a judge balance justice and accountability with grace and opportunity?
That is the mission of the juvenile court judge, I believe. It's always to focus on the best interest of the child, but you must also balance that against the need for community safety. And I think just like in adult court, where you might have to set a bond, it can take a lot of courage to make the right decisions about whether or not a child needs to be detained, or whether or not a child can be safe in the community, and whether that child will put others at risk. I think it can also be the same kinds of decisions that a judge will have to make setting a bond in a criminal case. Can this person be trusted to come back to court? It's not so much a question of whether or not the crime requires a higher bond just because of its severity, but rather whether this person can be trusted to come back to court. And judges have to make decisions that may not be popular and may be subject to criticism. And so I think that it's very important that our juvenile court judges recognize the need to keep kids in the least restrictive environment that's safe for the community.
Same question now to Spencer Smith. I'll shorten it and just ask, how can a judge balance justice and accountability with grace and opportunity?
Yeah, we have to solve problems with answers other than locking people in cages. It takes a village to raise a family, and I strongly believe in rehabilitation and using every single resource we have in this community to get our kids on the right track so they don't end up in the prison pipeline.
We have time for one more question, and this is one that was handed up from the audience, and I think it picks up on what you, Mr. Smith, said earlier in your introduction. So the question is, what guarantee is there that Division 9 will be the juvenile court? And if there is no guarantee, then what qualifies you to handle any caseload given to you? Yeah, I think it's from a voter's perspective. Do we know what we're voting on as you a judge? And do you know what you're going to be asked to do in this associate circuit judge position, District 9? And Spencer Smith, you're first on this one.
Yes, so one of the first things I did when I decided to run for associate judge is meet with the presiding judge and discuss how cases would be assigned. And we simply do not know what types of cases Division 9 will handle. And I want to say that again. We do not know what types of cases Division 9 will handle. Just because Judge Gonzalez handles juvenile cases does not mean that Judge Devine, the presiding judge, is going to assign the newly elected judge juvenile cases. Roger Johnson, who will be the Division 11 judge, he will be conflicted out of criminal cases. Judge Devine could easily decide to give him the juvenile docket. He could spread out the juvenile cases among several judges. But the most important thing, since we don't know what kinds of cases Division 9 will handle, we need somebody that's committed to public service and somebody that's going to be quick on their feet. I've tried every type of case you can imagine, and I'm ready for the job.
Bill Ellis, same question to you. I don't want to take the time to repeat it, but I will if you want me to.
No, that's okay. I also met with the presiding judge and all of the other judges on the bench, and I had a similar conversation. Nothing has been promised to me as far as being the juvenile court judge. At the same time, I've had no indication from Judge Devine nor any of the other judges that I've spoken with that juvenile would be reassigned. I've not had or heard of any judges who are more senior who would want to take that position. The fact is, we're losing Judge Gonzalez, who's our juvenile court judge, and those cases aren't going away, and we need the right judge to handle those. We're also losing in Division 11 Judge Pierman, who is a family law specialist. She's retiring, and Judge Roger Johnson is running unopposed for her seat. So we're losing a family judge, replacing her with a criminal law specialist. We're also losing a juvenile court judge. I have criminal law experience, a lot of it, and a lot of experience in a lot of other practice areas, but juvenile law is my strength and what really sets me apart. And not every case in the courthouse is a criminal law case. Somebody's also got to handle the family law and probate and other cases that can come in associate circuit court.
We've reached now the time for our 60-second closing statements. We'll go in reverse order from what we did in the opening statements. So that means Spencer Smith, we'd like to hear your closing comments.
Yeah, I've been on both sides of the aisle, which has given me a good perspective. There's certain judges that are career prosecutors before becoming judges. There's nothing wrong with that. And sometimes candidates are career public defenders, and there's nothing wrong with that either. But I think it's important to have a comprehensive perspective of what justice means. And I've handled the most serious types of cases as a prosecutor and as a public defender, but I also have other life experiences. I have handled other types of cases, but I want to be transparent with you. I am an expert in criminal law. That doesn't mean that I haven't handled a handful of civil cases or family law cases before, but I'm also a father of 2 autistic children, and I think that also gives me a unique perspective and might give me some more compassion and understanding if families come before me that are dealing with special needs kids.
Bill Ellis, your closing comments, please.
Well, as I said, I've also got wide-ranging experience, and I'll be ready for whatever kind of case is assigned to me on day one. But in the time that I've been practicing, I've learned that nothing feels better to me than when a struggling kid or a struggling family in crisis turns it around. And as I've been out campaigning and canvassing, I've met a lot of other people out in the community who share my belief that the right trajectory can, or the right decision and judgment can change the trajectory of a life. I've spoken with CASA volunteers, foster parents, teachers, social workers, kids and families who've been in juvenile court themselves. And they share my belief that if we can help a struggling family in juvenile court, not only does it help that individual or that kid or that family, but it also helps future generations of that family. And that in turn helps our community. And this is a way that we can all make our community a better place. And so I humbly ask for your vote, and I thank you very much for your time.
We appreciate you both being here. Before you step away, I do have a request from some of the audience members. If you could stand up so they could see you. We have a large crowd in the room tonight, and it is not tiered, so it's all on one level. Bill Ellis is closest to me. Spencer Smith is farthest from me. This is what they look like. You look at that. These are the Democratic candidates for the Boone County Associate Circuit Judge Division 9. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here. And we're going to ask the candidates who are for the auditor position for Boone County. We do have a contested race there. And since we are short on time, we're not going to take a break for radio. We're going to make everybody, nice to have you here today, and make everybody just rotate on the run. And I'll do some introductions while we're asking these two candidates to come forward. These are the candidates for Boone County Auditor. Alan Bell Long, is that correct, sir?
Yes.
Got that. And then Kyle Riemann, he is on the far side from me. The winner of the primary election will not have any opposition in the November 3rd general election. So we're going to do the same thing with these candidates as we did with the prior candidates. Give them 2 minutes to introduce themselves. When we ask questions, they'll have 60 seconds to answer each question. And then we'll have also a 60-second wrap up or final comments. So we're going to go in the order that they would appear again on the ballot. Alan Bell Long, we appreciate you being here tonight, and we'd like to hear your opening remarks, please.
Thank you. Thank you to the Columbia Public Library and to the League of Women Voters for putting this on. Really appreciate being able to come here and explain why I'd be the best candidate for this position. I am Alan Bell Long, and I am running for the Boone County Auditor's position. I grew up in Kearney, Missouri, and got my Eagle Scout and ended up going to Northwest Missouri State for my college degree in management information systems. I've been a software developer since graduating in 2007 for almost 20 years now, working on the payment services teams and really building and maintaining financial systems, working with cash runs and general ledgers and any kind of financial reporting or balancing that would be involved in that. And after graduating, I went directly into working as the software developer. I ended up getting the opportunity to join the county in 2024. I've been working here for almost 3 years now, and I was able to take on the payroll system and got that into a more stable position so that we didn't have errors all the time, which helped to transition us into our new ERP system that we are currently using for our payroll, that it will be eventually transitioned into our entire system that we have. And working there, I've also been able to interact with a lot of the elected officials, which has really garnered my or sparked my interest into becoming an elected official myself due to my desire to serve the community. And also because I have a strong financial system background, I felt like the auditor was a great position to start that transition.
Thank you. That's Alan Bell Long. Kyle Riemann, we'd like to hear your opening comments, please.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Kyle Riemann. I'm the current Boone County Auditor and have served since 2023. I grew up in Warsaw, Missouri, and am what you would call a true believer type. I started going to school board meetings when I was 14 because they were buying an AstroTurf football field instead of replacing my 1986 science book that was outdated. And so I was interested in how public money flows. That continued into where I got a degree in degrees in sociology and economics at Missouri State, and I just wanted to be involved in how public money flows. I started with the state in 2011 and have worked 15 years in the public sector, both in finance and policy analysis. I served as the budget officer for the city of Columbia, and I was the director of the Joint Committee on Legislative Research Oversight Division, which is a mouthful, and basically in charge of doing all the fiscal notes. So all the bills and tax cuts and Medicaid bills, Medicare bills, changes. I did all the analysis for that and led a team of 17 for that time. In our time, my time at Boone County Auditor, we have done a lot. And I feel like you probably haven't heard a lot about our office because it's not a flashy office. We're there to make sure that everything is running smooth and to be support to our elected colleagues. We've done a lot in a short amount of time and I'm very proud of the work that we're doing and hope to continue to do the work. And I'm really looking forward to the opportunity to continue to serve our community. I'm also a small business owner with my wife, Colleen, who's sitting on the floor right there. And we own Hexagon Alley and, I've done, I do the accounting and finances and operations for that as well. And really want to continue to serve our community and appreciate the opportunity to come here and talk today.
Thank you, Kyle Riemann. We'll start questions now. We'll have time for just 2 or 3. And we'll start, this first question will be directed to Alan Bell Long. The question from the League of Women Voters asks, what skills do you bring to enhance working with all of the county departments on their budgets?
One thing I did forget to mention in the beginning is that I am a father of 9. So I do get daily budget requests. I'm fairly familiar with calming everybody down and making sure that everybody gets what they need based on a certain set of rules that may be laid out. And so working with the elected officials, not that they are children, but I would be able to bring that conflict resolution as well as collaboration with them that I don't think that really anybody else can based on just what I've experienced out.
Thank you. And Kyle Riemann, same question to you. What skills do you bring to enhance working with all the county departments on their budgets?
Sure. So I've been working with them and my team for the last 4 years. So worked with every aspect of county government. What I brought to the table from that is, again, the experience, 10 years of experience working at the state. There was kind of the local government analyst, so I knew how a lot of the other counties work, some that are maybe more, as I call it, evolved, such as Jackson County or even the state itself, as bureaucracy tends to grow. They go through growing pains, and Boone County has definitely gone through those same kind of growing pains and all the different departments. And so trying to learn how to sophisticate our growth to keep up with the needs of our community is definitely something that I bring to the table, and hope to continue to do so.
Kyle Raymond, first, you get first shot at this one. What improvements can be made or have been made in the last few years for the county auditor's office?
Yeah, so there's been lots of improvements to the county auditor's office and the county as a whole. I think probably a key part of it is worked on is our new payroll, both our payroll system, that was already kind of alluded to from that we and my team have definitely had a lot of issues getting off our legacy payroll system. And, you know, we audit every payroll, we try and identify the issues, we try and make sure everything is working well. And we've been very instrumental in helping to make sure that that continues. We have, who's in the audience, we hired a new ERP administrator to help be the bridge between the financial side and the IT side, to bridge that policy. That's a role that I used to serve in a long time ago, and it was definitely a role that I think we needed here at the county. It's been very instrumental in helping out. We've done lots of just process improvements in terms of trying to reduce paper, trying to be more efficient, and I'm out of time.
Alan, Mel, along your answer to the same question, which is what improvements can be made or have been made in the last few years in the county auditor's office?
So as Kyle did say, there is the improvement of the ERP system that we have recently moved to, which I was a very integral part in getting that across the finish line. That was in development for over 6 years before it finally got pushed in. And it is still not fully implemented. I would like to have that fully implemented as soon as possible, given whatever regulations are needed in order to get that across the finish line. I also believe that bringing the analytical side that I have and the troubleshooting skills that I have from a software development perspective, I believe I can bring more simplicity to the office in order to make things more understandable for the general public, so that this office isn't such a mystery all the time, so that everybody can be more in line with understanding what the office does and what we can provide.
I'll follow up with this one last question, and Alan Bell Long, you're first on this. How do citizens know if an auditor is doing a good job?
Most of the time, it's if you don't hear anything, it's no news is good news. From my understanding, as long as everything is being provided in a timely manner by the auditor's office, that is the way that it's supposed to be, those things will be recognizable on like the website, looking at whatever links are available, whatever requests are happening, as well as in the event that something is not being funded, well, that's going to be a clear sign that something isn't really running well in the government. So that would be also something that could potentially be maybe some stagnation in the collaboration in the auditor's office or in the community or in the government center as a whole, just dealing with the different elected officials and coming to an agreement.
Thank you. Kyle Raymond, same question to you. How do citizens know if an auditor is doing a good job?
Hopefully it's because they have an overall trust in Boone County as a whole. Our job is to help to instill that and work with our colleagues to make sure that they're doing and following proper, whether it's reporting policies, spending money appropriately, et cetera. And hopefully that kind of flows through there. And thankfully, we have a great, very talented group of elected officials at Boone County. We're a leader in the state, frankly, and a lot of the associations and talk about that all day. But, or the other side is if they aren't following, then you might hear us be a little more vocal in trying to explain, hey, here's some of these issues. We tried to handle this internally and now are bringing that to light in the public eye to hopefully apply pressure to make corrections to serve the citizens. And thankfully, we don't have to do that very often here in Boone County.
I apologize if we don't have time because of our schedule tonight to do all of the questions that you have provided as an audience and that I even wanted to ask myself. So we're to the closing comment portion of our visit with the candidates for Boone County Auditor. Closing comments, you'll each have 60 seconds and we'll do the reverse of what we did at the opening. So Kyle Riemann, your closing comments.
Yeah, thank you. This is kind of what I've been doing my entire life and career, and look forward to hopefully continuing to do that, and we'll still do it even if voters choose otherwise, frankly. And you know, for me, I want to serve our community, and I want to do that in a way of how we help inform decision makers and how we allocate resources and make decisions. Hope to continue to do that, especially as we come up on times that may not be the greatest with the decisions the Fed and the state governments are kind of pushing on us. And, I can just say that while it's not necessarily something that I'm looking forward to, it's something that I definitely think I'm prepared for and my team are prepared for, and hope that everyone can trust us moving forward to help serve our community and continue to do so.
Alan Bell Long, your 60-second closing comment.
Thank you. I've been looking for a way to really get involved in politics for a very long time. And with my children being kind of grown now, not fully grown, it's really led me to have an opportunity to put myself forward and be able to put myself into a more public-facing role where I can serve the community of Boone County. And that is something that I've really wanted to do for a long time. And bringing the skills that I have of building and maintaining financial systems for my tenure of software development, having a strong attention to detail. In fact, the emails that were sent out for this initial meeting, there was an incorrect email, and I brought that to the attention of the moderator, and it just so happened to be Kyle's email. So I do have a very strong attention to details, seeing those things and being able to point them out, and calling a spade a spade. I believe that the professionalism that I can bring to the office is insurmountable.
Appreciate that. I kind of like the idea of having our guests stand because that gets them moving away from stand. Kyle Riemann is the farthest from my left side, and he is running for the Boone County Auditor. And right next to me, Alan Bell Long. They have been our guests and our candidates. We appreciate both of you being here. Good luck to both of you. We're going to continue to move on, so we'll ask our three candidates for Ward 4 City Council to come up to the front. While they were doing so, I want to put a pitch in from the League of Women Voters. There is information on the back table if you don't have this information already. And before you leave tonight, this Your Vote Matters, which is talking about certain key dates. We're already past the voter registration deadline. Tonight is our forum. Early voting begins a week from today. So if you're going to be on vacation on August 4th and not be able to vote, then you might want to do early voting, which starts on July 21st. And hopefully you've gotten your reminder from the Boone County Clerk with all of the important information that she has provided in regard to voting for this August election. And there is also a short description on the back of this postcard that talks about Amendment 1, 2, 4, and 5 and Proposition 1, which we will still hear about before this evening is over. All right, we're going to move into talking about City Council position. Nick Foster resigned his Ward 4 position on the City Council, and so one of these candidates will be elected to take Nick's place. Candidates are Dave Sorrell, Ryan King, and Sharon Jones. We're going to do the same thing with these candidates that we have done with the prior two segments of tonight's program. Give them 2 minutes to introduce themselves. Then we'll have some questions, 1 minute to answer for each of the candidates, and then we'll do a 1-minute wrap up. So again, I know that we're going to try to end this shortly before 7 o'clock. If you do have questions, the early bird oftentimes gets the worm. So have those questions handed up through the League of Women Voters to the front. We're going to go in the order again for how they are on the ballot, as I understand it. So Dave Sorrell, welcome. And you've got your 2-minute comments to start us off.
Okay, well, thank you. I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for having us here this evening. My name's Dave Sorrell. I've lived in Columbia for 39 years. My wife Dee and I have raised 3 children here. They're all grown. I know how city government works. I had the privilege of serving this community for 24 years as an employee of the city. I was originally hired as an engineer in public works. I held several different positions. Last year, I retired as the director of utilities. The jobs that I had when I was at the city were about solving problems. How do we make sure the lights fail? How do we make sure the trash is getting rid? Are we planning responsibly for future growth? Are we using our ratepayer and taxpayer money wisely? My jobs weren't about politics. And I got to work on many amazing projects when I was there, and I fully understand the operations of the city, the processes for having projects completed, processes for having ordinances approved. One of the things I think we really need to focus on at this point is getting back to the basics. And the basics for me are strong public safety, reliable infrastructure, planning for growth, financial responsibility and accountability to our ratepayers and taxpayers.
That's Dave Sorrell. Next to him is with our second candidate to introduce himself with his two-minute opening statement, Ryan King.
Hi, good evening. My name is Ryan King. I'm an independent voice. My candidacy is based upon public service and community service, and not political connections. So I'm an attorney. I've worked in the area of social services for the last 14 years. I'm also a judge advocate in the United States Army Reserve. I additionally am on the Housing and Community Development Commission here in Columbia. So we work a lot in the area of affordable housing and job skills and things like that. Another thing that I do, I'm on the board of the nonprofit Columbia Track Club. So we raise money basically for community wellness programs, such as we have a traveling youth running program. We also have a summer track program that we do. But I'm running for city council because I believe that my ideas and platform, if implemented, will make a big difference in the lives of Columbia's residents. And some things that I want to emphasize are fiscal responsibility. So we've been running a budget deficit in the millions. So I'd like to balance the budget and maintain some equilibrium there. We also have infrastructure projects that haven't been completed that have been approved by voters. A big one is electrical transmission lines that we approved in 2015. I'm also big on character, maintaining Columbia's character. So one thing I love about Columbia is the parks, the forests, the access to trails. And as Columbia grows, as we see areas of growth in the fourth ward, especially, we need to make sure that our neighborhoods stay centered around parks and trails and not big box retail and sprawl. And we also need to make sure that Columbia remains accessible to everyone of all income levels. So I'd like to emphasize affordable housing, especially increase the supply of low to moderate income housing so everyone can enjoy the city that I love and we all love. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Sharon Jones, welcome, and your opening comment, please.
Thank you. It's so great to be here tonight. Thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting us into the library, for putting all of this together. These forums are so important for voters. Is it not on?
It's on.
Closer. These forums are really important for voters, getting to know their candidates and who they're going to vote for. So thank you to all of you for doing this. I am Sharon Jones. I am the current chair of the Planning and Zoning Commission here in Columbia. And in my day job, I am a civil rights attorney and a policy advocate for groups such as the Missouri Voter Protection Coalition, the Missouri State Conference of the NAACP, and Promo Missouri, all focused, and Missouri is to abolish the death penalty, all focused on civil rights and the rights of the most vulnerable people in our population. I see the next few years as a time where Columbia is doing long-range planning. We are not planning for the next 5 years or the next 10 years. We're planning for the next 50 years. And I want to help us be good stewards of our community for our children and grandchildren. We are looking at the Central Area Plan, which will change the fundamental nature of the Central Area if we're not careful. We are looking at the West Area Plan, which is desperately needed so that we are able to provide utilities to the farthest reaches of our city boundaries. We are looking at the Strategic Plan, which will tell us where we're going to place new industry, new housing, things like that. And we are looking at Columbia Imagine, which sets our values as a community. I know how to get things done within government. I've been getting things done on Planning and Zoning Commission. I've been getting things done in the courtrooms for my clients, and I get things done in the legislature when policy starts to threaten our rights. I want to take those skills of learning how to work together to get things done into the planning, into city council. Thank you.
We're going to go to questions now. I'm going to start with the questions that the League of Women Voters, they're sponsoring this, so they get to get their questions asked first. I like that and respect it. It's the City of Columbia. Dave Sorrell, you're first on this. City of Columbia currently has an ordinance enacted some time ago that says Columbia Water and Light should achieve 30% renewable energy by 2028. Would you be in favor of increasing that amount to 50% by 2030 and 100% by 2040? Why or why not?
I would not be in favor of increasing that amount at this time, and the reason that I'm not in favor of that is we currently have under contract enough energy to meet our needs. And so if we were to increase our renewable energy portfolio, we would be buying energy that we are going to be at the mercy of the market to just dump it because we're not going to need it. So until we need more energy, I would not be in favor of requiring additional renewable resources.
Next, to answer that question is Ryan King. Would you like to repeat it?
No, I'm fine.
Okay.
I'm in favor of renewable energy, but one thing that I would like to keep in mind is affordability. You know, we need to make sure that things remain affordable. We're already increasing utility rates by 6%, water by 10%. So we need to make sure that we're able to residents are able to afford these things. And if we can ensure that, then I'm all in favor of increasing these goals.
Sharon Jones, same question for you.
I am in favor of that. I'm in favor of any time we have energy sources that are going offline, replacing them with 100% renewable. And we know that over the next 2 or 3 years, we're going to be losing major sources of energy for our grid. We need to be planning now to look forward and see how do we replace those sources with renewable energy. We're not going to be building more coal power plants. So let's look at where can we replace things like the Sykeston plant, which is going offline before 2029, with renewable energy sources.
And first on this question will be Ryan King. What motivated you to run for this office?
I'm a person who likes to take action. I just saw some things that I thought should be done differently. I thought we should have a balanced budget. I thought we needed infrastructure to be completed. And a big thing for me is community wellness. So I wanted to continue to emphasize in Columbia the parks, to make sure our lives are centered around those parks instead of sprawl you might find in other communities. Like for me and my family, I have a wife and a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old. Our lives very much center around the park that we live by. We walk there almost every day as long as it's not too hot. We picnic there, we'll ride our bikes there, and we also meet a lot of members of the community in these parks that we otherwise would never meet. So they're just really important to community wellness, and they're a big part of character. I just want to really ensure that we maintain these great things about Columbia as we get bigger.
Sharon Jones, same question to you. What motivated you to run for office?
Well, I've always worked really well with the city council, including Nick Foster. And when he said that he was having to move to Atlanta, I started hearing from people saying, would you step up from planning and zoning into city council area? And the reason I said yes is because of the long range planning that is going on right now. I think I've got a skill set to do it, and I really want to be a part of making sure Columbia is still on the list of the best places in America to live when I'm ready to stop working. Right.
Dave Sorrell, same question to you. What motivated you to run for office?
Well, when I heard that Nick was retiring because he was moving out of state, I retired last year, but my commitment to public service hasn't ended. And I have seen politics get in the way of progress on a lot of projects, that were mentioned earlier, like the transmission line, Henderson Sewer. Just the fact that it took 10 years to get approval to go in an automated refuse collection. And I think we really need to get focused back on our basics, which is public safety, reliable infrastructure, planning for growth, financial responsibility, the things I mentioned earlier.
Next question, and these are from the audience members. 2 questions that are related, so I'm trying to debate which one to ask, and this will go to Sharon Jones first. Both of them relate to the flock camera system. So I'll ask, what are your views on the flock safety and condor camera systems regarding solving or preventing crime versus more trained beat officers and then the privacy issues that go along with that.
So I think that there are serious First Amendment and privacy issues anytime you put cameras into public spaces. I think we need to make sure that we are auditing those. We have seen those cameras get used in other places as a way for individual police officers to abuse that access and go after their own personal enemies. And sometimes they're domestic violence survivors and targets. So I don't like having them without having the transparency that we were promised and not given. And it's that kind of staff promises, city council demands, and the fact that city council isn't getting the answers that they ask for that really concerns me when we talk about things like the block camera or the high power transmission lines or any of these other projects. City council should be the ones guiding our city, and they're not getting the answers they're asking for.
Dave Sorrell, same question to you. I can repeat it if you'd like for me to.
Please.
So what are your views on the flock safety and condor camera systems regarding solving or preventing crime versus more trained beat officers? And how do you feel about the privacy issues that flock and other systems like it raise?
Well, I think as long as, what Sharon said, as long as we're transparent and we're being accountable with their use, I think they're fine. I will say the very first flock cameras that the city installed were installed by the water utility in response to vandalism at our drinking water wells. And putting more beat officers in the well field was really not very feasible. So the cameras could be well used in a remote area like that to monitor what's going on. I think they're great in helping solve crime, and I'm in support of continuing to use them.
Ryan King, same question to you.
I think we need to be really careful that we don't let ourselves fall into or go down the slippery slope of surveillance state. I'm okay with our license plates being scanned. That's something I can live with. I don't like the idea of my face being scanned when I'm walking down Broadway or in my neighborhood. I think we just need to draw the line somewhere in terms of how we're being surveilled and what kind of information is being collected on us. And in terms of flock versus police officers, I would rather see, a neighborhood police officer in my neighborhood that I can speak to versus, have a set of cameras up on poles watching me all the time. So, thank you.
All right, we're going to move to another question. This is actually one that was sent to the library earlier today in anticipation of audience questions. And it has to do with candidates oftentimes do not say or claim to run on issues or motivated by activists. So the question is, how would your background and qualities help you work and alongside Columbians who are activists for a whole host of issues that they care very deeply about? Dave Sorrell, you're first on this one.
Well, I mean, I've worked with the city for 24 years, and I've worked with a lot of members of the community on different projects. And I think I'm well versed in how to communicate with people and negotiate and come to solutions that everybody can accept and finds to be a good solution. I don't have an activist agenda, and I'm gonna come in here with an open mind. I'm gonna use data, facts, and logic to try to make decisions. That's what I would plan to do.
Brian King, same question to you. How would your background and qualities help you work alongside Columbians who are activists for a whole host of issues that they care deeply about?
Well, I think it's important to be able to work with diverse groups of people, and that's exactly the kind of experience I have. Working in social services, I work more with more of a disadvantaged population at times. As a judge advocate in the Army Reserve, I work with soldiers. So I work in legal assistance, and I also do briefings on soldiers that are deploying. Then, of course, as part of the Columbia Track Club, I work with the running community, the more physical active community, and you just have to know how to balance the interests of each group and listen and just the big thing is listening and consider different viewpoints and just figure all those things into the decision that you make.
Same question to you, Sharon Jones.
I would say that the voices of the community and the constituents are the most important part of a city government. We are a local government. We need to be listening to those folks. I don't find people's voices, even if they result in a delayed project or a canceled project. I find the fact that those people are coming to city council to be incredibly inspiring. So I would work with them in a way to make sure everyone gets heard, everyone's input is taken into account, and everyone's needs are balanced in Columbia.
All right, we're gonna move on to another audience question, and actually three that are semi-related, and I'm gonna try to simplify this the best I can. And basically, two of them directly ask about short-term rentals. Ryan King, you're first on this one. Just curious as to your position on short-term rentals and where the city is in regard to establishing policies that are not going to need to be revised again.
Well, in terms of revising those policies, I think we need to wait a while before we revisit those laws. I'd like to see them implemented a little more. And I think the current laws, I think, there could be some administrative changes. The way I understand it is that it takes a long time to get approval through the process. But I also would like to maintain the balance between the rights of property owners and also the rights of the individual property owners who are trying to rent their properties, and also the rights of the neighbors. That's something we need to consider. We need to see how these current laws shake out before we need to try to revise those.
All right, Sharon Jones, you're next, and I think Ryan understood the question better than I asked it, and that is about short-term rentals and revising current policies, where the city is on that and where you think that we should be.
So I was on planning and zoning when we started the most recent round of short-term rentals and was part of drafting the ordinance that passed a couple of years ago and went into implementation. I've also been there and was chair as we talked about revising it and how do we streamline the process. The key thing about what we're trying to do at this point is increase opportunities for people who are wanting to rent out their own home. So if I've got a mother-in-law suite or ADU on my property, making it easier for those folks so that they don't have to go through a lengthy process. You would still, if you were a bad neighbor who had violations, if you were someone who wanted to be right next door to another one, would still have to come for special permission, and no one would be allowed to own more than one. That was the biggest thing we saw as we were drafting the ordinance, is there were some people that owned 26 or more short-term rentals. We have stopped that practice, and that practice is not coming back.
Dave Sorrell, same question to you in regard to short-term rentals and revisions that you see as necessary now or some other time.
I agree with both my opponents, what they've said. The one thing that I think would be important to revise as soon as possible would be to streamline the process so it's not nearly as lengthy, and maybe make it more of an administrative process so people don't have to go both planning and zoning commission and council for approval of these.
We'll go to another question. Really going to be against some time constraints here shortly, but I'll try to squeeze in at least another question or two. And Sharon Jones, you're first on this one. Give us your pros and cons in regard to the Proposition 1 that we're going to hear more about in the next hour.
Well, the number one pro is that our firefighters and police officers need to be paid a living wage. They need to be treated with as much respect as possible, and really put in a position where they're not overworked and overstressed, because that makes everything dangerous for everyone. So that's the biggest pro. The biggest con is that sales taxes are regressive. They're not a good idea. They should be the last resort anytime we're looking at funding opportunities. I feel as though we need to ask a lot more questions and have a lot more safeguards in place. And this gets back to the lack of balance between city council's policy requirements and the staff and city managers' implementation. Our city councilors were asking the hard questions. They never got the answers that they needed, but they were put in a yes or no position. And I don't like that about this proposal.
Dave Sorrell, same question to you. Pros and cons of the public safety proposal.
Well, the pros are that we all know police and fire need more dedicated financial resources in order to buy the tools, equipment, and hire the personnel they need to do their jobs safely and effectively. The biggest con that I can find to it is that, how do we get in this position? When you continually have budget where your expenditures are growing at a more rapid rate than your revenues, raising the sales tax is only a temporary solution until you actually get your budget in line with your resources.
And the same question to you, Ryan King.
Yeah, we have city of Columbia, we have a lower, numbers of police compared to cities of similar size. So I think increasing those numbers a little bit, especially in Fourth Ward where we have some property crime would help alleviate that. My concerns are budget related. I haven't understood why we settled on 1% increase. That's going to generate $38 million. Maybe if we were more deliberate with our budget, maybe we could do 0.5%. Maybe we could only need $19 million. Those are just some questions that I have. If we had managed things a little differently, maybe we wouldn't need such a large amount and for such a long time. Because as I understand it, there's no end to this law. So yeah, budgetary reasons, I have a lot of questions.
Well, stay tuned next hour, folks, because I'm gonna get some answers to some of these questions. I'm going to squeeze in one more question. You don't have to take 60 seconds on this. I hope that you don't. Dave Sorrell, you're first. And it's an audience question that I'm changing just a bit because they wanted you to list organizations or others who are endorsing you. I'm just going to ask, name one or two endorsements that you're really happy to have for this race.
Bill Watkins has given me a very nice endorsement. He's former city manager, and I'm very, very happy with his. Mike Griggs and Columbia Water and Light Association has given me a very nice endorsement.
Ryan King, same question to you.
Well, as I stated earlier, my candidacy is based more upon my public service and community service and not political connections. So I don't have any endorsements that anyone would recognize, but I do have a lot of endorsements from canvassing and people who I speak directly with who let me put my sign in their yard. So I appreciate those people a lot.
Sharon Jones, same question for you.
I will tell you, the first endorsement that I received was from Intact, which is a local trans rights organization, and they are doing good work in the community, helping some of our, again, most vulnerable citizens. I've also been endorsed by the local Liuna 9x5, which is a huge, that's where my heart is. I've always been involved in union politics throughout the state of Missouri and am happy about that. I've been endorsed by the Sierra Club, which is, again, I love those folks. They come to planning and zoning all the time. I'm always happy to see DDOC and come up and tell us about our floodplain issues. So those are some of the big ones. I've also had a variety of folks from the community, some names you would know, some you wouldn't, who are putting my yard signs in their yard. And I've really enjoyed being on the doors, and I knock on the door and they go, "Oh yeah, I'm already voting for you, but thanks for stopping by." So that's always fun too.
We're going to do the 60-second closing comments. We'll go in reverse order from what we had as our opening comments. So Sharon Jones, you're first.
I'm, again, really happy to be here tonight. This is one of the biggest forums that we've had. In fact, I think it's the biggest forum that we've had. I've been to all of them. I've really appreciated getting to hear from folks. And to me, again, that's the biggest thing. Hearing from individuals about what they care about, hearing from constituents, seeing the folks that show up to planning and zoning, that show up to city council, that are involved in the community. I care about what you need and what you want us to know. And I'm got the experience as an attorney, as planning and zoning chair, to guide us through these next few years of planning that we're doing, and to work within the city to make sure that we are continuing to be a place that people want to live and want to retire. Thank you.
Thank you for being here tonight. Ryan King, your closing comment, please.
Yeah, thank you to everyone for being here tonight. But I have a lot of government experience. I don't have a lot of city hall experience. And as I'm walking around neighborhoods, what I hear a lot is that people want an outside voice. They want someone outside the system who perhaps won't allow business as usual, because business as usual has got us unfinished infrastructure projects. It's got us a budget deficit that's in the millions. And ultimately, one of the big things I care about, again, is character of Columbia. I think we need to maintain that, work towards community wellness, and make sure that our neighborhoods are built around our parks and not sprawl and big box retail. And I appreciate your vote on August 4th. Thank you.
Ryan King, thank you for being here. Dave Sorrell, we'd like to hear your closing comment.
Well, I think I know how city government works because I worked there for 24 years. I know how all the processes work and how the operations work. And I want to get back to a focus on the basics. So that's, financial management, strong police and fire, reliable infrastructure, planning for growth, and being held accountable to the ratepayers and taxpayers. I would make decisions based on data, using logic, and I would appreciate your support, and I'd be happy to earn your vote on August 4th.
Thank you for being here also, and thank you three for standing, please, in case somebody didn't see you. It's around 9 things there, candidates to work here, city council. And we appreciate you being here. Rudy Keller is supposed to be next, and he may either be. Rudy. The beard threw me, man. We're gonna introduce him in just a second as we make this transition. I would say this, I wondered last time that there were three. Folks, take it outside, please. 3 candidates for a city council position. I know that we had 3 candidates for mayor in 25. I think there were 5 candidates for mayor in 22. But I was looking back over the county clerk stuff, and I think the last time we had 3 candidates for a ward race was in 2021. There were 3 candidates for Ward 1 and Ward 6. So again, I really appreciate the fact that these folks are taking the chance to run for a city council position. Well, I'm gonna step away from the podium just a minute after I do this introduction. On August 4th ballot, there are going to be 4 Missouri constitutional amendments passed by the Missouri legislature and put on the August 4th ballot by Governor Kehoe. The Columbia City Council also has Proposition 1 on that August 4th ballot. Handouts with ballot issue information are available to those of you who are here tonight. And if you are listening or want to go online to get that information, the League of Women Voters Voter Guide is very good and available on the website at LWBCHCBC. My new glasses are coming later this week. And it includes information on the ballot issues. Amendment 1, well, we're going to hear this from Rudy in just a moment, and so I shouldn't waste time with this. Rudy Keller is somebody who I have great respect for because of his work as a journalist, a true journalist. He worked many years here in Columbia on the newspapers, and have somebody explain what a newspaper is if you're under 50 or 60. And I just think he does a really good job. Now he works for Missouri Independent, which has picked up those stories oftentimes by some of our local media, or he might explain how you can get it. Rudy, we appreciate you being here. You've got until about 7:30, so I know you could talk a long time, but you're going to really have to squeeze a lot in a short amount of time. But thank you so much for being here.
Thanks. Everybody hear me? Move this up a little bit maybe. Anyway, so David, thank you very much for that introduction. I've been in Columbia for most of my life since 1983. The Columbia Daily Tribune was a wonderful place to work until it wasn't. And I just really appreciate the opportunity to come back and see some of the people that I would talk to and work with at that time. But this year we don't have anything really on the ballot in terms of statewide elections that are going to be driving turnout. There's going to, not like 2022 when there was a big Republican primary for United States Senate. So it's these ballot issues that you all will see on your ballot in a few weeks that is generating all the money that you're seeing. If you bother to watch like the evening news, you'll see all sorts of advertisements telling you what to think or say or believe about Amendment 4 and 5. But let's go through the amendments that we have on the ballot this year. So you have Amendment 1, and that is the Parks and Soil and Water Conservation Sales Tax. That is a 1/10 cent sales tax. You have Amendment 2, and this is a question: shall county assessors be elected? You have Amendment 4, which is changes to the majority requirements for constitutional amendments proposed by initiative, and Amendment 5, which directs lawmakers to set revenue triggers and allows them to change the sales tax law to generate the revenue to replace the income tax. So, Amendment 1 has been in place since the 1980s, and last time it was on the ballot, they got 80% of the vote. And I think that for most people, the idea of voting against state parks or voting against water conservation is probably like being in favor of gum disease. It's not very, it doesn't make sense. It's got a 10-year renewal. It generates about $140 million a year. It pays for all the operations of the state parks. It pays for most of the maintenance and upkeep and upgrades that you would see at the state parks. And the state parks department thinks that that's just dandy because it means that you don't have to charge you money to go into a state park. The money that goes to soil and water conservation goes to landowners on a cost share basis. Most of the time, the state pays 75% of the cost for projects that have really reduced soil erosion in the more than 40 years this has been in place. So that's Amendment 1. Amendment 2 is pretty simple. It asks you, should all county assessors be elected? There's only one county where they're not elected, and that's Jackson County over in Kansas City area. And the reason that they're not elected there is because they got charter government, and that's the choice they made. And a few years ago, they didn't like how the assessor did the job, and when home prices were running up, and the legislators from Kansas City got this on the ballot to make sure that they get an elected assessor as well. And hopefully that makes that person more responsive to the voters in Kansas City. Occasionally we get these questions where we got to vote on something that only applies in one place. Now to the controversial stuff. Let's start with Amendment 4. And here is the ballot language you'll see. And if you just look over that, we're modifying how we pass something to get it into the Constitution when we propose it by initiative. And there's two ways that things get on the ballot in Missouri. One is the legislature decides in its wisdom that something like Amendment 4 or these other three need to be on the ballot. And they pass it and they get a majority vote in each chamber, and it goes on the ballot. And if it passes, then it gets a majority vote statewide. It takes effect. In this situation, for Amendment 4, it's the same thing for initiative petitions right now. If you propose something by initiative petition, a constitutional amendment, then you have, if you get it on the ballot, then if you get 50% of the vote plus one, then you get it passed statewide. There are also things in this about foreign political donations and signature fraud. And the current law is that you can't make a donation to a political campaign of any sort if it's a foreign source of money. And signature fraud is a crime that gets you up to a year in jail. And actually, the provisions of Amendment 4 make those penalties slightly more for accepting a foreign contribution with an actual criminal penalty involved, slightly less for the signature fraud by limiting the fine to $1,000 instead of the current $10,000. Here's some of the messaging that you're getting from on Amendment 4, and it's that you'll protect the Constitution from foreign influence, special interests, and political gains. Well, the argument that has been made for Amendment 4 is that there's all sorts of money that's flowing into the state of Missouri from organizations that don't tell us who they get their money from. And that money is now influencing us to do things like pass adult use marijuana or Medicaid, expand Medicaid services to a large number of people, or in one instance, change how we redistrict the legislature. And it's true, there is money that is coming in from large national liberal and conservative organizations on these issues. And these organizations don't generally tell you who's donating to their campaigns. So, but you know, it has not seemed to have created a reaction in Missouri voters saying, gee, this thing I like is funded by somebody I don't know about, so therefore I'm going to be against it. It's very hard, as I found as a reporter, to make people care about who's funding a campaign unless you can show that the campaign is taking money in a completely unethical way. You'll notice that this does not mention that it takes it's a different majority. And the new majority would be every congressional district would have to pass something in order for it to get passed statewide. So theoretically, it could pass with 100% of the vote in 7 of the state's 8 congressional districts and lose by a single vote in the 8th congressional district that it doesn't pass in. And it would be defeated statewide and get 95 to 5%. Another way of it would be is that if there was a part of the state that was particularly opposed to an issue, you could concentrate all of your advertising, all of your campaigning in that one spot and spend much less. The folks who opposed sports wagering two years ago spent $10 million. They stopped campaigning 3 weeks before the election and they almost defeated it anyway, and it only passed by 1,000 votes. Now, the anti-side of Amendment 4, they want you to know that, as I just said, and they say, let's 5% of the voters control the rest. Well, the reason that they are using that is because as Missouri Independent, we did the math, we did the analysis that showed that that was true, and we found that we wouldn't have had Medicaid expansion, we wouldn't have had medical marijuana, we wouldn't have had adult use marijuana, we wouldn't have had the limit on the sales tax on real estate transactions and the ban on adding the sales tax to other new things that the realtors put on. As a matter of fact, nothing that's been proposed by initiative for the Constitution would have passed. Now, there are people who say that we put too much in the Constitution. There's one of the things the proponents say is that this will prevent us from putting 14,000 words, which was the adult use amendment to the Constitution. The Missouri Constitution in 1945, when it was approved, was only 21,000 words. The reason things like adult use marijuana, Medicaid expansion are going into the Constitution is because that people who propose initiatives and push them have found that the legislature will change them if they're a statutory enactment. Maybe some of y'all may remember something on puppy mills. Yeah. I remember something on campaign finance in the 1990s, and Democrats were in charge then, and they promptly changed that. So it's a bipartisan effort. If you put it in the statute, the legislature can change it, and they will the next time through. Let's move on to Amendment 5, because this one deals with something I was just talking about, that limitation on the sales tax. Your Amendment 5 language require the phase out of the sales tax, authorize the expansions of this, phase out the income tax, authorize the expansion of the sales tax. What that is, this is if passed, is a constitutional mandate to the legislature. Set goals for new revenue. As those goals are met, the top income tax rate will be reduced. And when it is, if it can ever be reduced to 0, the income tax will not come back. Allow the expansion of the sales tax. This says that any transaction in the marketplace can be taxed. And that means literally anything. That you aren't paying sales tax on it now. Theoretically, you could. It would give the legislature 5 years to figure out a way to replace the revenue. So here's a little bit of the facts. The revenue was $13 billion in the most recent fiscal year, and nearly 2/3 of it was income tax. The sales tax produced about $3.3 billion of that revenue. And that 3% general revenue sales tax isn't the only sales tax we pay right now. We pay 1.225%. Remember that 1/10 of a cent that I talked about at the top? That's part of it. The conservation department gets an 1/8. Public schools get a 10th. Then you come down to the local level. And right now, all the local add-ons put the Columbia tax rate at 7, just under, hair under 8%. If we approve the tax on the August ballot, that will make the overall rate in Columbia 9%. And then if you go shop in places like Conley Road or some of those other recently developed areas, they've got extra sales tax that makes it 9, 10, it'll make it 9.5, 10%, those places. So once again, the top income tax rate would be cut based on revenue triggers. They've been using the figure of $200 million a year. And so in the current, that's about 1.5% growth annually, but we didn't achieve that this year. As a matter of fact, we went down 2.5%. The previous year, we only grew by 1/100%. So we're not growing very fast in revenue. As a matter of fact, it's falling. So it might be a very, very, very long time before the income tax would be eliminated by the mandated method of setting triggers to do that. Now, so if you expand the sales tax, then you start getting a lot of revenue real fast. Well, if you expanded the sales tax to things that aren't being taxed, say home rental, labor on your mechanic service or your dentist, how much does it cost to go to the dentist? Then you're going to get a lot more revenue at the local level, and you're going to get a lot more revenue for that 1/10 tax, the tax for conservation, and so it directs that those taxes be lowered, but doesn't direct specifically which ones. So for example, if Columbia got a lot more sales tax revenue, they could do things like eliminate the city property tax. They could decide that they can take the pilot fee off of the utility bill, and if the state utility bill, if the sales taxes are now on utilities. So let's do a little bit of math so you can understand where the sales tax will be. So if each 1% brings in about 1.1 billion, that means we're taxing $110 billion of economic activity in Missouri each year with the sales tax. If you only do that, if you only tax that base, then to get all the revenue you get from the income tax, you're going to need additional sales tax of 7 to 8.5%. It can be on any transaction, any goods or services. They could decide, for example, that every checking transaction that you make on your personal checking account, you pay a penny on, or something like that. And any kind of transaction, it can be a tax on any transaction. So to just use I'm going to take some questions in a minute. I'm going to wrap up. To get the additional revenue with the current rate, you'd have to find $300 billion more of economic activity. But it currently turns out there's only about $340 billion of personal consumption in Missouri each year. So the rate will go up. We don't know exactly how much, but the rate will have to go up. There's just not enough to tax at the 3% rate. So here's a little bit about the messaging. You might have seen the commercial of the guy standing in front of the hum of the data center, and he's telling you that the data center is pumping out pornography to Missouri. And that we don't get sales tax from the data center, but by golly, we will if this passes. It says that the average person will save about $3,000 a year, which means that you would have a taxable income in the neighborhood of 65,000, which, you know, if you're married and you use a standard deduction, that means that if your family income is in the $90,000 to $105,000 range, you will save about $3,000 on your state income tax. Now, the question then is, how much more will you pay in sales tax on everything else? Then here's one of my favorite of their commercials. This is a grandma's purse, is what they call this commercial, and she's got candy in her purse, and she wants to keep the money that she has there too, and that's what her message is. The antis, this is pretty much what I've been, you know, this is the analysis. It's math, people. Is, you know, if this analysis is accurate, the question is, what are they going to tax and at what rate, and what are they going to cut if they decide that they don't get enough revenue from it? And by the way, the tax scheme that can be done with this will be done without going to a statewide vote. And so it's the legislature will decide what the taxes will look like. And I probably took longer than I intended, but I've got about 5 minutes or so for questions. If we have, okay, so we don't, you know, transaction on ATM online, yes. I mean, anything that you do that involves exchanging money for a good or service in the economy is potential to be taxed. Right now, that 3% tax does not apply to your grocery purchases. The 1.225%, the public school and the conservation taxes, and all the local taxes apply to grocery purchases. So one place that they could go is add the general revenue tax back to groceries, and as they increase it, so 5, 6, 7% more at the groceries. Okay. Penalize those with limited incomes who pay little or no income tax through purchases. And that is true. There are a lot of people in Missouri who don't pay any income tax at all. And then if you're a senior citizen on a limited budget, you can even get a tax refund with having paid no income tax through something called the circuit breaker. That's a tax credit that is intended to cover your property taxes for your rental property even. And that would have to go away if there was no income tax. Amendment 2. My understanding, Jackson County voters have already voted to move to an elected assessor. So is Amendment 2 necessary? Probably not. You know, I remember one time when something passed for Boone County. It was called you know, we wanted to have a charter government, but we didn't want to work for it. So we got something through called the county constitution. And nobody around the state cared about it, but people in Boone County. So we got into the state constitution, everybody voted for it. And then we wrote about it. And so we never ended up with a county constitution. Jackson County will end up with an elected assessor, it looks like, one way or the other. But, you know, they could change their charter. They can change their, we can change the constitution. They keep saying a 20% tax on everything. Does Amendment 5 have a cap? Well, the only cap on Amendment 5 is raising enough money to replace the current revenue generated by the state income tax. So and the legislation that changes the sales tax has to explicitly say this is for the purpose of eliminating the income tax. And so it will say that we expect $2 billion from this particular change. And so the rate on the income tax will go down enough to prevent $2 billion of revenue from being collected. And, you know, this is not exactly, you know, the same thing as precise as Artemis. If you missed an Artemis, those folks were wandering off into the universe. If we miss with this, we're either gonna have a whole lot of money that legislators can spend on football projects, or we're gonna have far too little for the things that we have found essential. An attempt to cut social services. Well, it might be viewed that way, but many of the programs that are done through the Department of Social Services, many of the basics are mandated or entitlement programs. The Medicaid program, for example, the expansion that was done is in the Constitution, so it is required that people within working age adults have access to Medicaid at a certain level of income. So it's going to be very difficult to do away with much that state government does. I think the best way for me to wrap this up is that I've seen a lot of people demand that state government be cut and state government be cut and state government be cut. And the only time state government is ever actually cut in its budget has been when revenues are crashing or not keeping up, and these programs such as Medicaid are advancing in their costs because of their mandatory nature. Government tends to spend the money that it has. It tends to always need more. And the question is whether or not we're getting what we're paying for. I guess I would close. One of my favorite quotes from Winston Churchill is about taxation. And, you know, so maybe this is, as you think about this, and as the great principle with which this house ought to guard and cherish is that when the tax collector comes to the private citizen and takes from him his wealth for the service of the public, the whole of that money shall go for the purposes of which it is intended, and that no private interests, however powerfully they may be organized or however eloquently advocated, shall thrust their dirty fingers into the pie and take the profit for themselves. And, you know, taxes should be understandable and changed only after careful study. And I will close with one more note. The political giver, Rex Singfield, who has promoted this idea most in Missouri over the past 20 years, this past 2-year cycle has donated the equivalent of to politicians running for office and to ballot measure campaigns, the equivalent of the income tax he would pay on $54 million of income. So if you think 4.7% of 54 million is how much he's given as political donations, that is far more than most Missourians make in a year. And I think that's the way to close.
Thank you so much. We appreciate you being here. Keep on doing good journalism. We need to have good journalists who can help us to understand and educate us on these things. And we will now have our final segment of tonight's program, which is kind of a good follow-up.
It is.
And I know that the three, yeah, Rudy, your glasses are up here.
We want you to remember this.
Oh, okay.
So as we make the transition here, for those of you who are listening again, we have had a really good evening and a full room here of people, and I think there's probably going to be 1 or 2 questions for this last group. We turn our attention to Columbia's Proposition 1. Shall the municipality of Columbia, Missouri impose an additional citywide sales tax at a rate of 1% solely for the purpose of providing revenues to improve public safety for the city, which shall be limited to expenditures on equipment, salaries and benefits, and facilities for police and fire departments. Our three guests who are in front of us right now, I think maybe one or two or 1,000 times have done presentations on this so far. And Columbia Mayor Barbara Buffalo is closest to me. In the middle of the three who are at the front podium is Police Chief Joe Sluty. And then at the far left of my left is the Columbia Fire Department Chief Brian Schaefer. And the issue will be illuminated by them. Our target time for ending tonight is 7:45 because the library does like to ask its patrons to leave within that 15-minute time period between 7:45 and 8 o'clock. And so we'll shoot for that, but we'll have a little flexibility. I don't know how you're going to present this, but please leave time for questions.
5 minutes.
Yes, Carol is very clear on this. Is this on? Do you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so Barbara Buffalo, Mayor of Columbia. I am sitting down in case you can't see me at the back, but I am also short, so sometimes you couldn't see me anyway. We're gonna do a quick brief 5-minute overview of how we got here. I do want to appreciate the League of Women Voters voter guide has really good breakdown bullet points of what is in the ballot measure for August 4th. So I just want to do a quick overview of how we got here. And by the way, no elected official ever wants to come to anyone and say, hey, we want to raise taxes. So that's my foundation setting for where we are. But the reason why we're also here is because no elected official beforehand went to the voters to ask, would you invest locally in our local priorities for this piece? So we all know that I came here in 1998, population was around 80,000. We're now close to 130,000. In the last 25 years, we have only grown the sworn officers by maybe 100 officers in that time. No, actually not even at that, sorry, something like that. But so not even our city growth, city staff levels, whether or not it's police, fire, public works, those who are filling the potholes, those who are repairing some of our areas, we have not grown staff at the same level of the needs of services of our community. In 2024, the city of Columbia knew we had an issue with recruitment and retention across all of our city staff. And that was because we were constantly paying under the even median wage of what we were paying employees in the city of Columbia and our competitors. So for us, it was important to think about how do we invest in a living wage for the people that are providing the services in our community. Of our general fund, about 160 million is our general fund. 70% of that goes to personnel. We are for the last 4 years, we've consistently been cutting travel and training, services, materials, everything, but we've included increases, cost of living wage increases for our staff because those are the people that are providing those services and we want to make sure we have the people doing that. But things are getting more expensive. This is continuing to go up. And so for us, I want to talk about how we got to the idea of a sales tax. In 2014, the city of Columbia went to the voters and asked for a property tax for public safety, and that failed by over 60%. So we started talking a couple years ago about what would the plan be to actually meet the public safety needs, because public safety, streets, and health are always our top 3 priorities in our citizen survey. So the city manager went to the police chief and the fire chief and asked, what would the plan be for what it is that we need here? Not here are the resources, find out how to meet those resources, but what is it that you need and to do? And then they put the numbers behind it. They came to the city council and we started having work sessions 2 years ago on this subject. From that, we looked at what would our property tax be? So if we were to even double our property taxes, we bring in around $10 million in property taxes. The plan that they put together is around $30 million in needs and then sustainable funding going forward for our staffing levels and the needs of our capital improvements. So when we went to the staff, we're like, okay, if it's not a property tax, sales tax are aggressive. I don't really like sales taxes. But one of the things that we found is that we're really limited on revenue opportunities in the state of Missouri. You just heard Rudy Keller talking about what's happening at the state level. I have to promise you, and if you followed anything I've had to deal with over the last 3 years, I cannot control what's happening in Jefferson City. I cannot control what's happening in Washington, D.C. All I can control is locally, what can we do? So while we've cut everything we can in our general fund, we're now asking our voters to invest locally in local priorities, and public safety is one of those. So when we talked about this, we looked at a 1/4 cent sales tax. What would that bring in? What would a half? And what would one? And the one got us within 5 years, closer to digging us out of the hole we're in. What we have in the plan is if you go to oneforsafety.org or look at the voter guide, it has additional police and fire personnel. It has facilities for them, their technology plan, and then also the biggest one is that our pension, right? The unfunded liabilities that we have from the pension system that my council, previous council, we've all inherited. And we're just trying to find a solution rather than to continue to kick the can down the road. I'm gonna stop there, Carol. I don't know what my time is on this, but I was trying to talk like really fast. I'm sorry. I got my water. But yeah, so I have that experts with me to really answer any questions that we have or David that you have. Yes, I have been talking about this, and again, no elected official ever wants to talk about raising taxes. But for me, it's all the uncertainties that are happening with the state funding potentially coming in our federal government that we rely on for most of our general fund. I meant to also say of our general fund, 48% of it currently goes to public safety, and the other 16 departments are making up that other 52%. And so, yeah, the need is great. And one of the things that I like about this is that with them having sustainable funding, while we'll continue to contribute at the same levels of the general fund to police and fire, as we potentially see a growth in the regular general sales tax, that gives some flexibility to those other 16 departments. So for instance, going forward for this fiscal year, we have a balanced budget that is proposed, but that means holding off on some filling of positions. That requires also, maybe we're not going to do as many pavement improvements that we're going to do. Those are all in the general fund. And so potential flexibility there helps me meet those other needs we have.
I thought we were going to have a hard time cutting off Rudy Keller, but I think. So we'll let the chiefs, if you want to make a comment, but we do have some really good questions tonight. Questions? All right, here's the first one. Doesn't Proposition 1 undermine the authority of the city council to build, monitor, and oversee the budget by insulating two departments from the rigors of that process?
No, it would still, everything still has to come to city council. So everything still has to come to city council. Every single expenditure they have still has to be approved by the city council. And we also put in additional requirements that if it were to pass, not only just regular routine audits, but we would also have it be part of our city budget, a breakout that shows us how much revenue did it bring in and what exactly did the additional dedicated sales tax go towards.
This is a question that the chiefs will have a good chance of answering, and we'll start with Chief Jill Sluty from the police department. We've been told that there would be a reduction of serving if this does not pass. What specifically would be reduced?
Well, service reduction's been going on for a while, quite frankly. The city's just grown so much. We basically added Jeff City in the past 26 years. That's the amount of population we've added on. And so because we have not added the appropriate number of police personnel during that time, units that existed when I started don't exist anymore. We used to have a community services unit that included crime prevention. They did all the youth camps during the summer and things like that. We had a juvenile unit that just specifically dealt with juvenile crimes and juvenile offenders and worked with the juvenile office. We used to have a downtown unit at one time. We don't have a traffic unit anymore. A city this size not having a traffic unit is frankly pretty shocking. So we folded things in, and I've been robbing Peter to pay Paul as well. When we have an uptick in shootings, we move detectives from narcotics over to our violent crime folks. And so we're really just kind of playing this shell game. So if the city's not going to quit growing, so I guess the answer would be we'll just keep looking for places where we fold in services. Up until about probably 6 or 7 months ago, there was only one detective investigating every single property crime in the city of Columbia. So when you look at our property crime rates, which drives our overall crime rate, that's part of the reason why we have no way to interrupt that type of crime, because there's just no resources to investigate those.
And then Fire Chief Brian Schaefer.
Well, I think very similar, the fire department's pretty well been cut down to the bones, the meat's gone. So essentially we would have a community conversation about priorities, fire stations, and possibly some logistical support But realistically, we're 85% people. So when we get down to cuts, it is a direct service impact, and it's not something that anybody wants to talk about, but that's our reality right now.
So if Prop 1 passes, the question is, how will you ensure accountability and measurable outcomes? Who wants to take that first out?
I mean,
Well,
you're gonna audit it, but I'm happy to.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, the first part of it is that is part of what we do with our audit. So in addition to that, in addition to our normal budget process, we've also increased how we do our outreach in the community about where our money goes. This year alone, we've had 6 town halls on our budget, like where our money goes, where it comes from, talking about municipal bonds, all of that. We've got, besides our 2 work sessions right now, we've got 3 additional town halls before, and I'm doing a Let's Talk Local in, is it next Monday? 2 Mondays. And so we've done this outreach talking about where our money is going, and this would be an additional one that we would talk about. Also on our city website, we have an open gov where you can go and you can see our city's checkbook. You can see where the money is going and where it's coming from. But I think if you guys want to talk to any additional parts, Brian.
Everything that we do is measured in outcomes. We're an accredited organization that focuses on, like, in the case of our medical incidents, how many people survive neurologically from a stroke? How many people survive from a cardiac arrest with the least amount of neurological symptoms? How many people were able to return to home and live a vibrant life? Those outcomes we measure with the 4th person, with our 42 firefighters that we intend to add. That all focuses us in improving outcomes. That doesn't mention, the safety of our people. If we have 4 people per apparatus, that increases our survivability as well. Everything's connected to the mission and keeping our own people safe.
Chief Schluting, you want to?
You know, response times are always a thing. We're probably, I think at the last measurement, we're at a little over a 10-minute response time to a priority 1 call. That's pretty abysmal. Especially for a city this size, but that's just because any given day, probably on average, there's between 12 and 14 patrol officers working for a city this size. So that's not even 2 patrol officers per beat. There's 8 beats in the city. So my measurements are a little bit tougher. Crime stats are always out there, but boy, I could bore you guys for hours talking about crime stats. It's a passion of mine, but that's obviously another measurement. We would want to go back to a more we used to do a management model that they use in New York City and a lot of other bigger cities, but it's really talking about holding the lieutenants and the officers in a way accountable for the areas that they're responsible for. So we identify crime patterns and trends and then task them with forming relationships in the community to help solve those problems on the ground and hopefully drive those crime stats down. And hopefully the proactive piece kicks in. We're really almost 100% reactive police department at this point.
This is a good time to ask another question from one of the audience members. So if it doesn't pass, Proposition 1 doesn't pass, picking up on what both of the chiefs have just said, how do you make us feel that we are still safe as citizens of Columbia?
We asked if this was vodka, and I'm wishing that. I'll say on the crime part, if you look at our crime stats, I could fearmonger everybody, but the crime stats just don't support it, okay? They just don't. And so despite a lot of things you'll read online, please don't believe everything you read online. We're in a good place, but we're also a rapidly growing city. And if you look at the trajectory of Springfield, they wish they had our crime stats. And so there's always an element of perception that plays into this. And that's very important. I don't discount that. I don't hold that in any less regard than I do the actual numbers, because people don't feel safe. That impacts the way they live. It impacts their quality of life in their neighborhoods, how they shop, how they go to work, how they raise their kids. And so we have to be really mindful of that. So I think we'll do the best we can, but I am very committed to being honest with people about things. So I'll be trying to walk a very fine line between not trying to make you feel like I'm scaring you, but also being very honest with you.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, for both of our people are some of the most talented in the country. I've come up against anyone, and they're committed. They will take a bullet for you, and they will walk through literal hell to get to you if you're trapped. That part's not going to change. The quality of our people aren't going to change. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to support them and their efforts to be successful as much as we can. So we'll come. It'll be delayed. It won't be a perfect situation. And unfortunately, they'll be taking more risk because we'll have a delayed response.
Mayor, this might be more for you. Is the city able to specify sales tax on certain categories of goods rather than institute a universal increase? For example, this person who has sent this in through the chat on the Zoom, maybe just tax luxury goods, perhaps even entertainment, but not groceries or those day-to-day needs of all.
So the ballot measure that we have is the sort of general sales tax. I'm not sure what sort of specifics we could get into this for local. I believe that's something that's limited to us by what the state legislature put together. But I'll look into it. Good Lord, especially if this doesn't pass, what am I gonna figure out? We'll figure out this.
Yeah, right now it's not part of the proposition.
It's not part of the current proposition that is proposed for August 4th.
So I've heard the police chief answer this, I think as recently as last week, but somebody wants to know, can't the city ask the university contribute more police? You've talked about how few officers there are at certain times.
Yeah, so I actually text Chief Weimer at MUPD last week and just said, hey, out of curiosity, what's your normal staffing level during any given shift? And he said 3 to 5 officers. So they don't have resources to come help us. They have an entire campus with which they are also responsible for every university, health clinic, piece of property all around the city. That's all their responsibility. So there's only 3 to 5 of them on at any one time. And they have a lot going on themselves. So they've been very generous along with the Boone County Sheriff's Department in trying to help downtown last year. But I totally understand we're all kind of in a staffing crunch.
Yeah, and from my perspective, we really are on an island, unlike Kansas City, St. Louis, or Springfield. We don't have the luxury of having a number of suburbs around us. And in my case, we have a volunteer fire department around us. It may or may not respond with one person. We just don't know. And unfortunately, when you're having a problem breathing, or when you're having a neurological or an endocrine emergency, time is critical. We can't wait for somebody to drive from their house to the fire station to get a vehicle and then respond out. It could be 20 minutes. It could be some same day service. It's just not our model. It's the county's model, but it is not our model. When you call, we don't have the option to have a 912. We're it, and we're the solution. And your expectation is we're there, and we're there in less than 5 minutes, 90% of the time, and we solve your problem. And then we leave you alone. There's not over-regulation. We're probably the best business model in the country. We answer the phone on the first ring, you get an actual human, and we solve your problem. And that, yeah.
Remember that.
I weird.
Sound again.
Yeah, I should. It is the epitome of civic engagement. The accountability in this measure is far better than anyone that Columbia has ever been involved with. The transparency of this government compared to former years is the best that it's ever been. The technology is the best it's ever been. So to try to compare this with the property tax measure from 14, or from the feeling that citizens weren't engaged back then, I think is wrong.
There will be reports that will be regularly required by the council
Correct.
from both departments. Just a couple of real quick ones. One is, this is for you, Mayor. How can we be sure that the council and the city will not stop funding fire and police at the current level from the general fund once you have this additional money?
Yeah, by the proof of example. So 2004, when the voters passed the park sales tax, the quarter cent park sales tax, the promise that was made in all the forums, all the discussions on that, was that they would continue the same dollar amounts from the general fund to go to parks, in addition to the park sales tax dedicated fund. So we've been doing the same thing on this one. The same fiscal year 26 levels that are going to police and fire will continue to go from the general fund to police and fire, because the $38 billion don't fund they maybe fund just the police department's current annual budget. It doesn't cover their needs, and especially for the growth and digging us out of the hole of where it's been. So continue to do that going forward.
And it's not sunsetted because?
It's not sunsetted because the majority of it is going to people. And so it'd be really hard for them to recruit people to this position. If it said in 10 years, you have to ask for your salary again from the voters. I don't know if I covered that right, but
And then this question has to do with, wouldn't it make more sense to just do a general proposition to raise revenue for the whole city? Why specify this particular purpose?
So I'll speak from just my own experience and talking with the city manager on this. Police and fire is our number one service that we provide. Public safety is. It's 48% of our general fund. For us, it's going to be important to have that dedicated, sustainable funding for it. We know that they're going to continue to grow in their needs, but also at the same time, that will help us alleviate some of the pressures on the other 16 general fund funds in there, because that gives us a little bit of flexibility as overall growth happens.
And then I'll ask this of the chiefs. What's plan B?
Go ahead.
Don't talk about retirement.
Yeah, we.
Retire.
But
No.
in all seriousness, it's community engagement again. We'll come back. We'll pivot. We always do. We're a resilient community. I don't think any of us are willing to accept no. We have to do this for the future, for your kids, for the future of Columbia. This needs to move forward. We would just be regressing to worse of a response and worse outcomes.
But before we end, can I just ask, would you, so one of the things I mentioned earlier, our general fund budget, 48% goes to police and fire. Of that, in our budget overall, our overall budget, 70% is is personnel. Would you guys speak to really quick, what's your percentage of your budget that goes to personnel? Because I think that's important to hear too.
Yeah, so when I hear this concern, I understand it about, well, what if they just play this game where they take the money from here and move it over there? The reality that most people don't know is, of my budget, 85% of it is personnel. So that's pay and benefits. And so what you don't know is we run the police department off of about $4 million. So that $4 million pays for gas for my cars, training, my utility bills, bullets. We pay intergovernmental fees. You have to have an HR department and a law department and an IT department to support us. So we pay fees to support them. So we run the departments off of it. He's very similar, off a very slim margin. So if a future council or manager came in and said, hey, I got a great idea, let's cut some money from police and fire, that is almost certainly going to mean cutting people. And that has never been palatable. I've been at the city 21 plus years. I've never seen that be palatable with any city manager or city council or mayor. So to me, for my chair, the likelihood of that happening is very, very slim.
Chief Schluty, did you want to say anything about plan B?
I would just say, my biggest fear, to be very honest about this not passing, is we have a whole group of very young officers who the current workforce, and I speak from experience as I have stepkids all in this age group, they're very willing to pick up and move. And so if they have no hope of increasing their wages, of transferring to become a detective or a canine officer or become a supervisor someday, they will pick up and they will move to St. Louis, where they can start making $75,000 a year and top out at $102,000. And so what that does for us is, all of a sudden we're back to where we were when I was appointed, which is 40 vacancies, forced overtime, miserable people, which just, the customer service goes down horribly. There's more complaints. The service suffers. And that, to me, that means the community suffers. Everybody's miserable. And I don't want to see that happen. I think hope is a very powerful thing.
Yeah, hope is powerful, but it's not a strategy.
No.
And we need to be firm. We need to be very pragmatic and purposeful about moving forward. That's what this plan does, is sets a future for public safety in Columbia.
Long after we're gone.
Yeah.
The website is oneforsafety.org, correct? And spell out one. Anything you want to end with, Mayor?
No, I'll just say, we're happy to come. We're doing these talks, we're having all the award check-ins, checking in with everyone, doing all the forums, because we really just wanted to help engage people on this. I am also reading comments online and all the different things from blogs and different stuff. And I'm just like, go ask us the questions, ask us the details to see the city finance department's budget breakdown. And you can see where those dollar amounts go and what it is we're talking about.
Want to thank again the mayor and then the chief of police and the fire chief for being there tonight. Thank you also, the audience online as well, especially of those who are in this room. It's been a packed room, standing room only for most of the evening. That's a terrific turnout. This forum has been recorded. It'll be posted on the league and the library's websites. Thanks to Lauren Williams up here and her crew and KOPN for broadcasting tonight's forum. The league has a voter guide that I mentioned before. We hope that you will get that. Read the instructions from the Boone County Clerk. If you want to vote early, you could start doing that next Wednesday on July 21st. And we also know that I think the president of the League of Women Voters got her 10,000 steps in tonight. Have a good evening and vote.